Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do a special top 10. This was requested by a new subscriber who had a great idea asking about what are some of my favorite top solo games in the medium to heavy range. And that was a very good question. I realized I haven't done one yet, and so I decided that is an excellent... Sometimes you just need that little nudge to go, hey, go do this. It doesn't take much time. I went through my list. I went through my history. I thought deeply. I slept on it. I ate on it. I ate some ice cream on it. And I came up with an epiphanal rating of all of my top favorite solo experience. But I did have some caveats that I wanted to say before we begin. When I say top experiences, first off, I didn't just do medium and heavy. I broke it up into top light, top medium, top heavy. Because sometimes we're top heavy. Anyway, I am going to say that this is very skewed to, as far as possible, being specific experiences for multi or single player game only. That means that the solo game has to be, for the most part, done specifically for solo. That's not guaranteed, though. In other words, if the game is for one player only, it gets supreme precedence, if insofar as it can, based on the quality level of my enjoyment with it. There is an exception, though, and that is there are a lot of great games that are not solo only that are still great solo. And so my test for that is, if I would rather play this game solo than with others, then it is considered a candidate. That means there's a lot of games that aren't, because there's a lot of games that have tremendous solo experiences, coin games, campaign and levy games that I'm like, I really enjoy the solo, but if I had a chance to play it with a friend, I would choose to play it with a friend. And so any game that's here that's not specifically one player only, it's on here almost exclusively because I would rather play it solo than with a friend. And in general, some more framework. I don't like beat your own score solos. I just don't. They don't. Lots of people like them. It's rare for me to find where I'm like, yeah, how well, I got 72 points this time, 52 last time, maybe. I'm generally not into that. I want the feeling of beating or conquering something. I don't want just score. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I mean, ranked ladders are everywhere in life, and stuff. They're just not something I particularly find conducive to the vibrancy of my thrill factor when it comes to these types of things. And the other thing is, I don't like solo games that emphasize tremendous difficulty instead of fun. There are very difficult solo games out there, and sometimes if the method of making it challenging is to make it difficult, I'm generally out. I'm not big on that. Even on the video games, it's like Dark Souls kind of thing. If it's really hard, permadeath, not really my gig. Used to be that way back when I had time and not money. Now I have some money and precious little in the way of time. So those aren't likely going to be on the list too. If they are for you, you might have a different list of ones going, yeah, I want the biggest challenge. I want to be the Iron Man of board gaming soloness. And finally, I don't like games where you are sort of destined to lose and all you're doing is just eking out as far as you can on the runway before the jet tips up and the engines fall off and explodes and you don't actually fly. That was a terribly dark analogy. Anyway, there's certain ones, for example, Robinson Crusoe, you're hit with a bunch of stuff. This isn't a solo game. That's an example of a game where you start off in this perilous circumstances and you build your way up to escape the island. But then the sequel to that was you start off with a fully functioning Mars base, and then over time you're just trying to plug the holes in the dike and try and survive as best as you can. Those are not the types of games I like. I like positive. There's enough of that, yeah. Entropy in the end, like gravity, always wins. And so those are probably not going to be high on my list. And those are the caveats. Enough of that. That was 3.5 minutes of caveats and apologies and all that stuff. Let's get into it. Top light games that are solo almost exclusively that I love. I'm not doing this in expressly favorite order, although the last game in each list is probably my favorite. Onirium just broke all my caveats where it's basically a beat your own score kind of thing, except you win. You don't really beat your own score. You either win or you lose, but I do like it. Onirium is like the shuffling game. That's what my kids used to call it, because you shuffle, 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 shuffle. Dominion is one thing. Onirium is even more like shuffle, 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 shuffle. But I just loved it, and there have been so many additional games afterwards that added some very clever things in this shady Torby lineup that I think added really clever mechanisms, but nothing really grabbed me the way Onirim did. It's single player only. You're basically just finding ways to lock doors, and it sounds mundane, but it's actually something that I can mindlessly play and enjoy. I played the digital version and went like, nah, I'll just stick with I'll shuffle my way into funness. So Onirim. Friday by Friedemann Fries is a classic game, and that one is brutal. Again, breaking my rule above. It is a brutal game, but it is a thematic game. You are trying to get off the island. You are eking your way to get off the island. You were learning some of the concepts of that are games that 10 years later we now take for granted, like how to thin your deck, how to organize your deck, how to set things up. Like you're getting hit by stuff, and you have to lose to win. There's so many little things about Friday that keep going on, and it is brutal. Like, you are not going to escape that island very often. So Friday is another one that I think deserves merit as a great solo experience. Coffee Roaster, despite it had some poor production issues, not only the first version but even the second version. They were remedied, thankfully, by the company, belatedly, but they were remedied. But Coffee Roaster is something that goes fully in line with what I like, which is it's not beat your own score, it's brew the best cup of coffee. So many options and potential options and theoreticals as you're building this coffee out. It does such a good job of helping you feel like you're happily moving gears and pulleys to create great coffee, that instead of having you go like, okay, mathematically I get a +2 to this and a -2 to this. No, it does a really good job of making the theme hide anything mundane about the mechanisms involved, and being a solo game, it's just really nice. The deluxe edition is not really a deluxe edition, it's basically the edition that should have been there anyway, but that doesn't matter. I'm having a great time with it. So Star Wars Outer Rim, despite the fact that this game is primarily for multiple players, I really enjoy it most by myself. I think that I just want to go around and I want to basically do all the things that bounty hunters and smugglers and traders do in Star Wars. I have plenty of great Star Wars games. This is one where I feel I can go off and do things I want to do. I do enjoy it, 2-player and 3-player. Probably 3-player would be second, but for some reason, if I had to play this game with others or by myself, I would play it by myself, and I would probably, maybe ask if others wanted to play something different. Again, not bad, but solo, I just love the adventuring experience and not waiting around for other people's adventures and experience. I guess I'm kind of selfish. So there you go. Stars of Akarios is a Kickstarter that came out that is an epic sort of a space adventure opera. You fly around, you do ship combat in space, sort of like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter kind of stuff, and then you go and you have your mega ship, and you upgrade as a pilot, you upgrade your skills of your ship, you upgrade pretty much everything over time, and everything's fluid. The storyline branches and stuff, but I would rather play this by myself. I would rather manage a couple ships and just than to play with others for some reason. There's nothing wrong with playing it multiplayer, but Stars of Akarios for me is sort of I'm going to sit down and play Star Blazers kind of with its, albeit simplistic, but effective story. And plenty of room for improvement, but plenty of improved gameplay, particularly for one. Speaking of which, game translations, Fallout, the board game, came out, and I thought it did a clever job of being very, very true to Fallout without the minutia. I think that you see iconic sites in the Fallout board game. Again, never ever play it without the Atomic Bombs expansion. Just don't do it. There are reasons why. To make it a cooperative experience is probably optimal. And if you're one player, everything's cooperative experience, right? I would never play this with others because I just don't think it plays out well. It might be okay a bit, but I don't see tremendous valuable need. I don't see interaction that really actually puts it over the top of being, I would rather play this with friends than myself. I will play Fallout with Atomic Bonds myself. I love how it imbues all of the Fallout 4 lore into an experience that feels thematically legit. And while some of it I think is a little too simple, for the most part, I think it's a rock-solid solo affair. And again, these are light games. And when I say light, as a caveat, I'm going off of Board Game Geek's, 1 to 3 is light, 3 to 4 is medium, and 4 to 5 is heavy. So when I say light, I'm not talking casual. because a lot of these games are, a lot of the solo games, they're not casual. There are very few solo casual games beyond, solitaire, Windows Solitaire and whatever. There just aren't a ton of light solitaire games. And so this is probably the broadest range. You've got Onirium, which is really a tiny game and it's just about shuffling. And then you have these more complicated games. So don't take light as being like, I could tell all of my friends who don't play board games about this game. So, and finally, in the light category, the game I love the most, and the game that's growing onto me, probably be one of the top three just in general solo games I love, is Paperback Adventures. As a huge fan of words and building up words and coming up with clever words, and filling in, like, I really like that. And so Paperback Adventures takes that and turns it into a sort of a Slay the Spire dungeon. Like, yeah, it's a rogue, sort of a verbal roguelite, and it does everything perfectly. It just rocks. You get these really clever enemies. You get the build up to these bigger enemies. You got your bosses and you got your regular people you fight, and then you fight the big boss. And the wordplay and the way that it combines, it really shocked me when I got it, because I'd heard great things about it, but I hear great things about lots of stuff. But then I set it up and I'm playing, and I'm like, this is great. I literally can make words to punch people and to attack people and to build up stuff and to, like, and it's not rote. It's not just, okay, hit it for 20 points, come up with the right words. It's each of these bosses, all of the equipment that you have. You've got your, your high-powered equipment, your average equipment. You're beefing up, you're upgrading, you're building up your skill set. You're getting more letters. I mean, literally, you're taking wordplay to the extreme. I don't know how I could be is for the $100, and if you can get it for about 70, but if you want, and it has this odd thing, and that's one thing that's set against it, is that you have to buy the core pack, but then you have to buy some of these modules that fit in, and so you might get the you got the pirate one, which I love. You've got El Machina, Damsel, and Plot Hook. Yeah, that's it. So those are the ones. And so you do pick a different thematic thing, but it all works together. You can even mix and match a little of them together into this experience where you set it up, you're playing it. I absolutely love it. And it's tricky. It's hard. I mean, but you can build up, and you feel like you build up with this first one. You get enough, to buy and to upgrade your abilities, that you get to the next combat, and then the next one, and you build up. It does it in sort of almost a video game like cadence, a good video game cadence. And so if you have a chance to play Paperback Adventures, I don't think you'll be disappointed if you're even remotely like me. Now let's get into top medium games. Medium is a 3 to 4 on the BGG scale. Again, it's arbitrary. Let's roll with it. One of my favorite series is Thunderbolt Apache Leader. Now, there's a lot of the Leader series. You've got your, your Sherman Leader. You've got your Phantom Leader. You've got your Zero Leader. You've got your Leader Hosen. But of all of those, the one that I felt that I enjoyed the most still remains Thunderbolt Apache Leader. You are getting close air support combat, and it's the one game of all of those, and they're different. I mean, second would be Israeli Air Force, because it spans multiple generations and multiple technological leaps in the style, and so it's secondary for solo. These are all solo. Thunderbolt Apache Leader makes you feel powerful and vulnerable perfectly. You get to rise up over. You're going into these battlefields. Everything. You take out a lot of stuff, but you also have to be mindful of stuff. So you're not so overpowered that you're just like blazing through, going, "I'm Superman," but you're also not going the first time I get a hit. Like, this whole campaign is shot from the start. And so Thunderbolt Apache Leader still remains one of my favorites. Nemo's War is a solo-only game wherein you are Captain Nemo, and it has the clever idea that you're basically adventuring in the world where Nemo played. But what's different about this is that the objectives you're trying to achieve vary so radically that you're not going to get this sort of formulaic, okay, once I've solved this puzzle about where to move Nemo around as other ships come in and attack me, or as if I have objectives, whatever. It gives you a lot of leeway. I mean, it really changes the game based on which victory condition you're trying to achieve, and you choose that early on, and then go, okay, this is my stance, this is my posture as Nemo. And then the other thing I like is that it gives you It gives you I mean, it's tense. It's a tense game, especially later on when stuff's closing in on you, on your submarine, and you have this like risk reward factor. I think you get plenty of mitigators so that you don't feel like you were totally at the mercy of random number generation. But I think it gives a nice balance of like, I'm going to take a risk. I'm anteing up. I'm making my bets on this poker match of a historical fiction game. So there's that. Skies Over Britain is one of the more recent games that I've come to adore. And anything with Jeremy White is going to be a... Anytime you have a solo experience and you want historical narrative and you want it solo and you want to feel like you really got imbued into the topic, you look no further than Jeremy White's games. And Skies Over Britain, it's a line of games. There's Skies Over... there's lots of Skies Above the Reich, Skies Over the Reich. So Skies Above Britain is my favorite, just because I like the plucky idea of just going out and fighting and, defending Great Britain in the 1940s and stuff. Again, tremendous detail, documentation, rulebook. It's almost medium to heavy, except I think you'll be able to get these concepts a little easier than one of the other games on his list. And so we'll go with that. DDay at Pelelu. John Butterfield comes out with some tremendous solo experiences. He's coming out with one in a couple years. It's going to hopefully knock our socks off in the space opera like venue and scene. But any of the DDay series are brutally difficult, but brutally difficult for logical, orderly, reasonable reasons. If you lose and you're like, okay, things just didn't go well here, but you don't have, again, this complete random... I could blaze through this game, and the next game I could be, knocked out on the beaches. I guess you kind of can say that about it. But either way, it develops this really immersive experience of just what it was like to be grinding yard by yard in Pelelu in World War II in the Pacific Theater. So that's one that I really enjoy as well. Imperial Assault is not a single-player game. In fact, it probably recommends more than one person, but for some reason, as an app-driven game dealing with sort of like ground warfare in the Star Wars universe, I really enjoy it singularly more than any other. That's not true of others. Journeys in Middle-earth, the other app-driven game in the other venue, I do not like solo as much as I like playing with others, but for some reason I really like Imperial Assault by my onesie. And finally, Haplamicus Victorum. This is a chip theory game, and this is a masterful, solo-specific, solo-only, don't even think about trying to add other players game. When you are done setting this up, you feel like you were at the command console of a Roman chariot, electronified with all kinds of buttons to master your domain. It again takes some of the sort of the video game pacing and styling and level up concepts. It creates a theater. Like, you literally travel around where you want to go for the most part, what you want to do. You get into fights and battles that are very, very varied. You'll take on different enemies on different islands. You'll know who they are because they're the same enemies, same islands. If you go to this island or this section, you're going to take on these people for the most part, not always. You're going to have troops that you command. You're going to be a hero on the battle map. You're going to be playing chits and cards. You're going to be going back and forth. You finish the battle, you go out. Again, tremendous upgrades. The component quality on this is like hypersonically magnified over your typical solo game. It is a masterpiece in presentation, and it's a nice level up difficulty. It will get harder and harder, but you will still feel like you made progress and that you're empowering yourself as this warrior over time, bringing about change in this region. And this is a game I could set up on a table specifically and solely for it for years and just go back to it and play here and there. It's just, yeah, that's a good one. Then we have Enemy Coast Ahead, the Doolittle Raid. Another Jeremy White game, and this was my game of the year, I think, in 2019, whatever. It takes every detail in the planning phase, the preparation phase, the outfitting phase, the traveling phase, the actual point when you're bombing Tokyo, and then the afterwards, the after effect phase, and it puts it all into this contiguous storyline that makes you feel like you're literally a black and white character in a black and white movie of the Doolittle Raid. Jeremy White when he sets down to do a a thematic historical representation of something, every detail is thought out, and he gives you the highlights of all those details. Another one that I could set up a table for and leave out over time. And the logical, orderly phasing each time, like choices you make at the start of the game, little choices like how much do we let the pilots intermingle with their family members. If you let them intermingle, you're going to get a bonus, but you're also going to get the possibility of a detriment that your secret raid could be revealed. Like that starts like way early, and then you go play through the entire thing, and you'll find out later on just did it merit, did it work out, was that risk, did it pay off well, everything. Like it's so detailed but not cumbersome, detailed but not like over fiddly in a way that takes you out of the moment. And so enemy coast ahead, do little raid. And finally, the top middle game that I have played and will never get rid of is The Mission, the first 2,000 years of Christianity. There's a lot of Bible games out there. They started off being terrible, usually trivia or Triviopoly or some stupid variant of some mainstream game that had to be Christophified. Yeah, but there's not. I mean, over time it's gotten so much better, and as far as that goes. But when you read The Mission, you are really kind of playing through a synopsis of Christendom as a historical endeavor. And so you will see as you're setting up this game, you will get little snippets of everything going on for from the very first point, all from the apostolic age all the way on, and it's all logically orderly, smooth. It's up to you to branch out, spread out. Over time, you will see, like in your mind, you'll see the seasons of centuries change, and different things come about, and different things on a somewhat scheduled regimen will come in, and you'll contend with those. And it's not on rails. You're not playing through a slideshow of Christian history. You really are able to make some changes that will have some feasible, possible alternate scenarios of what went on. And so it's a game that'll take several hours to complete. Someday I want to mount the board. I got the larger board, but this game is cream of the crop. Just like for the light games, Paperback Adventures just kind of risen up and said, I stand on my own. The Mission stands on its own as an achievement in solo gaming, specifically solo gaming. And now we get to the final, which is the top heavy games, the heavy, deep solo games that I play. Which ones do I love and enjoy and just yum 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 steak? Alright, so first off is Comancheria, which I also have Navajo Wars and Comancheria, and both could really kind of be defined this. I said early on that I didn't like games where you're destined to lose. This is an exception to the rule because of just how awesome it is. Comancheria and Navajo Boys Wars both deal with the situation where you're an Indian tribe, you're making your way, you're doing your best over the course of generations to do as best as you can. I mean, the world will change around you and there's nothing you can do about it, but you can keep eking your way as far as you can. It's one where normally it's difficult, it's tricky, and it can be really demoralizing because you could be building up as best as you can and then just get pummeled and like, what more could I do? Sounds historic. And so one of the things and why this game is so vivid in it is because of the deep detail that the designer Joel Toppin has done. He's a mainstay in GMT gaming, and he's just a great guy, a great ambassador, and a great person. At the time of this video, I think he's actually in Israel, going and seeing all the various sites that in that region. But anyway, so much has gone in to really eke out the perspective of the tribes and what they went through, how they dealt with it. Some very clever mechanisms for how things you do get counterbalanced by things that happen to you in fair measure, because you're going to need all of the assistance you can get. And generally speaking, if you start off just playing this blindly, you're going to get thumped early on. Like, until you really understand what you can do and how you need to go, what's important, what risks you take, how you branch out on to build your tribe and sustain your tribe. Yeah, it's indescribable. It's been rare to find, and I'm glad that I have my copy. And Secret Santa was extremely kind last year in getting me Navajo Wars, and I am ever grateful for it. Next we have Spirit Island, another game that's 1 to 4 players, I believe, but I would not generally play with others because I think the sad part is that there are synergistic. There's some synergies based on who you start and who you're playing, as far as the character, the creature, what do we call them, the spirits that you're contending with, and some of those really do lend to multiplay, and so it's by no means a slouch in the multiplay. But there's something I really enjoy about the single player. You're on everyone, even if you're playing multiplayer, you're kind of in your own little world a little bit to start off with anyway. And I love playing Spirit Island because it is a tremendously clever puzzle that doesn't get samey very much. You're fighting again. You're fighting against oncoming storms. It's not going to be easy to keep these darn people out, but you have such clever methodologies and some clever inner workings, clever ways to use all of the things available to you, and foresight. You have some nice foresight into what's coming up. And so unlike games that I despise where you don't know what's happening, so you just prepare as best as you can for something only to find out that what you prepared for was not even close to what actually happens, you have no foresight. I at least want partial foresight into what's going to be coming down. That's not, I mean, anybody in life will send out scouts to figure out what's going on. If you have half a mind, you're going to do that. So a board game that basically says stuff's coming at you should at least give you partial information so you can at least have a fighting chance of being prepared and not just, rolling the roulette wheel and going, well, maybe I'll hit on black. So anyway, the next one is Renegade. This is not a very commonly known game, but it's done by, I believe, was it the Box of Delights, or one of the board game reviewers did this game, and I'm glad I picked it up when I did because it's really hard to find. But if you love Netrunner or that vernacular of this sort of cyber Tron kind of thing, you're gonna like this game. And I really like it solo. It's for other people, but I like it solo. It's very bizarre. Rather than describe it, just look it up. Renegade, Box of Delights, and they'll explain it better than I could. But I love that one single player. And then the Atlantic Chase, again, another Jeremy White game. The reason it's more complicated is because it does something it takes mechanisms I've never ever seen before as far as playing hide and seek. And the fact that you can do hide and seek solo tells you just how bizarre and unusual this is. This is something that could not be pulled off in other games. I wish it could. Like I have Star Wars, the big box, Star Wars Rebellion, and I would love if I could come up with something as clever as that. There are solo modes now, but clever as that for Star Wars Rebellion. But man, the cleverness of how this game mechanism works. I would rather play this solo than with others, although I'd love to play it with others. But man, playing it solo, just the feel of going out and getting your intel, figuring out where things are, being able to, it just grows in the layers and layers of events and things that can happen. Jeremy White does the best documentation ever. You will never be at a loss for where to go to find something to know. You might not remember everything, but between every single piece of information, it isn't just overkill. People complain it's like 100 pages of documentation, like it's 100 valuable pages. That's different. If it was 100 pages of rules, I'd be like, sorry, I'm out. But if it's 100 pages of documentation, all of which helps get you into this tremendous system of a game that's unlike any other, yeah, that's it. So Atlantic Chase gets my nod for that. And then High Frontier for All is one of the most complicated, mind-stretching games about plausibly making your way into the vast realm of space. It's not a space opera. It's not a space adventure. It's all about like just getting a rocket ship up, getting out into space, moving around planets, all of that stuff. It's detailed, it's got minutiae, and I just wouldn't want to contend with a friend. Maybe having someone reteach me again in between the times that I'm playing it, because it's epic. It's got the best manuals I've ever seen, and I mean Atlantic, other game, like I just said, Atlantic Chase, Jeremy White's manuals are top notch and they're substantial, but to be able to do this and to be able to have manuals that actually help teach you from the very infancy all the way to expert as well as they did was a sterling achievement. So High Frontier for all. And now to the last two. The other solo game that I absolutely love and love is Fields of Fire. Now there's Fields of Fire 2, Fields of Fire the Bulge. They're all generally the same system, but Fields of Fire is specifically a solo game about squad level fighting in close, like in the brush, in the bush, and it is vilified for its complexity and difficulty and learning curve. Some of that is merited because it is incredibly detailed in ways that I usually would turn me off. There's certain games where I'm like, okay, I don't need to know. I can't keep all of that in my head. Fields of Fire, though, is such a great game once you get through the other side of the forest of learning that you will be astounded by how much is done with just no dice. This is all, you use the cards, you use the multi-purpose cards. And when they take multi-purpose cards, usually there's 3 or 4 things a card could do. This does like zillions of things each card does. It's thematic, it's sensible, learning it. There's so many. Last year was the year of just a beachhead. Some group established a beachhead for creating really good rules, learning documentation, tutorials, everything that they're using and have continued to iterate on to try to get it so people can understand how great this game is that want to give it a shot. When you leave this game and I walk away and I come back a few months later, it is difficult to pick up again. And so I'm hoping that some of these initiatives to making the game simpler to all of us will help. But it is a game you could play over and over and over for years, and with so many different theaters. Literally, you're running cable for communications in some of these scenarios. It's not. We take communication for granted, and the Atlantic Chase in this game kind of reel us back into, no, we didn't have instantaneous access to everyone's location to know if our daughter really was at the store picking up milk like we asked. And as a tip, my daughter's so reliable, she would do it. I'd never had to do that. Just caveat, my kids are awesome. But in that age where you didn't know, where you sent a letter and wondered if it ever got there, and you didn't, as opposed to, hey, did you get my text? It's good to, that's a segue, but anyway, Fields of Fire, top notch. And the final game, the most epic solo game experience, the one that I love and adore the most, that is complex, is Mage Knight. Mage Knight, I did not and do not generally want to play with other players. Does not play well with others. I can, but the brutal learning curve, if I play with other people who already play a Mage Knight, we get along okay. There have been times when I played 8-hour games of this, and from the time of teaching it, it's wearisome. But then you take it out and you play it solo, and you're like, this is awesome. This is Age of Wonders. This is Here's My Magic. This is that sort of feel of just, I'm here and I'm using this tremendous, clever, multi-use card, puzzly, fit everything together, eke my way. It's an eking game. If you're used to games, you're like, okay, I got 5 movement points, so I'm going to move from here to way over here. No, it's like, I've got 5 movement points. Maybe I'll get to move a space or two to get closer. And then when I'm going to have to contend with these creatures and monsters, and but you play this game, you immerse yourself in Mage Knight as a solo game. It is a nice, almost perfect blend of complex puzzling and complex adventuring, and the feel of being in a strategy game that really does make your choices pay off, and you can play over and over again. I've all of the expansions, etc. and stuff, and you just play through. It's different enough every time that you're not going to be bored. Just a tremendous effort. So that would be my favorite. Not as much of a gap as the other two, but that would be my favorite top heavy game. So that's it. One more thing, there's certain games that I don't consider top for me, but I think might be top for others. Hostage Negotiator / Final Girl. I'm not big on the tension theme. Hostage Negotiator did a job of setting you up to be really stressed out. In other words, it did exactly what it should do if you're negotiating with hostages and trying to keep your cool. It just wasn't for me. I just was too too tense for me. I don't know why, but it might not be for you. Under Falling Skies and Warp's Edge are two games that are really well received. I did not really get into them, either one. I felt they just didn't resonate. I don't know why. Um, from the perspective of the gameplay, the mechanisms involved, it seemed like it would be a great game for me. It just wasn't. Neither one of them really resonated with me, but they might you. And finally, there's one game that just came out called Resist, which has you, which really well received. People really like it. It's a game of the resistance and your resistance fighters, and you're trying to hold out, and you're playing cards. Either you play cards to use their weaker ability, or you literally get rid of the card for this one-time power ability. Seems like it'd be a great idea, but I think this is the one where it hits the point where you're just going as far as you can, and like you're gonna like, yeah. Some games I can handle for that. When you're like, we're gonna do our best. David Thompson did a couple, Ides of, or Day of Fire, Nights of Ire, etc. etc. But for some reason, this one hasn't resonated with me. But it may you, and I think it's maybe being reprinted anyway. And that's it. That's what we've got. So now it's your turn. What are your top solo explicit experiences that you guys have? Because I'd like to know too. Because I'm always on the lookout for really cool solo experiences. All right. Thanks again. We'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.